A reading from the book of Exodus. In those days, Amalek came and waged war against Israel. Moses therefore said to Joshua, "Pick out certain men, and tomorrow go out and engage Amalek in battle. I will be standing on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him. He engaged Amalek in battle, after Moses had climbed to the top of the hill with Aaron and Hur. As long as Moses kept his hands raised up, Israel had the better of the fight. But when he let his hands rest, Amalek had the better of the fight. Moses' hands, however, grew tired, so they put a rock in place for him to sit on. Meanwhile, Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. And Joshua mowed down Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. The word of the Lord.
Our first reading for today, which is also World Mission Sunday, by the way, comes from the book of Exodus. We find the people Israel engaged in a battle. Well, every battle is dangerous. And there is always the possibility that the people Israel, even if it is God's chosen people, would lose. So we have here the camp of Amalek being the enemy camp of Israel. Now, Joshua was commanded by Moses to fight Amalek. Wow! Now, what can Joshua do? It was already Moses who ordered him. Moses, the friend of God, telling Joshua, "Sige, fight. Go ahead. Makipaglabang kayo. Sige, akong bahala." Now, what would Moses do? What would his share be in the battle? His share was prayer. Moses lifted his hands to God. This is an old gesture of prayer. Remember that song? Lift up your hands to God. This is the equivalent of saying, pray, pray. Now, of course, the first reading presents it in a dramatic way. We have Moses with his hands lifted up to the heavens in an act of prayer and supplication. And every time his hands were up, the Israelites won. But the moment he put his hands down, meaning the moment he stops praying, the side of the Amalekites would have the upper hand. And so they saw that Moses' prayer was working. And he got tired. So they put a stone where he could sit with his hands raised to the heavens. And still, Israel won. But Moses got tired. So Aaron and another companion took his hand so that they would be lifted until sunset. And every time his hands were raised in prayer, Israel won. What do we learn from the first reading? First of all, there is a value to persistent prayer. That is what the people who are in danger, the victims, the oppressed, that's what they need to do. Aside from all the other actions that they take, one thing that they should never forget, we should never forget, when we are threatened, when life threatens us, when we are oppressed, turn to persistent prayer with our hands lifted up to God. But prayer, the first reading tells us that prayer is heard by God. God is a God who hears the cry of those who are in danger. God is not deaf. God is the God who can respond after hearing. But we need to address God too. That is our share. We need to trust in the God who hears us and who listens to us and who has the capacity to respond to us. That is the whole point of prayer. What is the use of turning to God if we can do it our way? If we turn to God in prayer, that means we trust in this God. We believe that God can accomplish something for us. And we will not be rendered in despair. God hears the cry of the poor. God is truly the refuge of His people. We can rely on God, but do we approach God in prayer? You know, one great French Dominican Cardinal theologian, Yves Congar, said, many of us make prayer the extension of our short hand. If we can reach something with our hand, we do not pray. Bakit? Abot ko naman eh. I don't need God. Abot ko eh. When do we start praying? Only when hindi ko naabot. He says, but that is not true prayer because it is not grounded in faith and trust in God. Even if you can reach something, pray. Even for the energy to reach it, pray. Trust in God. This is the type of prayer. Useless is the prayer that is simply mouthing out words when the heart does not even believe, I need God.